Hello and welcome back to our final set review for Opus 22 Hidden Hope, and we're doing Light, Dark and Limit Break. Right, first off we have Eden. We've finally got another Light Summon, and it's pretty nutty. So the cost required to cast Eden is reduced by 1 for every Category 8 character you control, which means it'll never cast 8. Never cost 8, sorry. And what you do is choose up to 2 forwards and divide 30,000 damage among them as you like.
So, do you play this in the Cat 8 deck?
Yes.
Well, definitely play it in the Cat 8 deck.
just checking. Go ask these hot topic questions.
I'm still not sure.
Well, there's no reason not to.
How cheap does this, or how expensive does this have to be before you say you won't play it?
6.
6 is too much, but I'll pay 5 or pay 4.
Yeah.
4 is probably your sweet spot. Anything less than that's great.
And then the next question is, how reliable can you get that number of characters? Because yes, we've kind of seen they can cheat forwards out quite easily, but I feel like we've also seen in Lightning there's a lot of removal in there anyway. So by the time you've got all those things on board, you've probably got access to enough removal. So then the question is, okay, fine, is this the card that buys you time until you've got all that removal? But then you're paying a bit too much for it. So
if it's gummed up in your hand, you still have things like Lulu now. So,
and the thing is, it does say character as well. So like, you're probably always going to have some sort of cost reduction off this,
yes,
no matter what.
Probably that. The question that I was trying to say is like, how of all the Cat 8 stuff we've seen, how many backups are we actually really playing?
One at most, I think.
2, maybe 1.
It's the Renoa one. The rest are all forwards.
Yeah, maybe Sid as well as a 1 or 2 of, but again, it's not.
Yeah, the problem with Sid again is there's no easy way to get him.
No, but I think you still play him as a 2CP Lightning backup. But
yeah.
Yeah, but I agree. But my point stands is that fine. So at best, so if we say on average you've got 1, that's only reducing it by 1. So we're saying you need to have at least 2 other forwards on the field.
I think you'd be surprised at how quickly it can ramp up, though. So either way, it's worth trying to see how easy those numbers can be. I think.
I think it's worth trying. I actually agree with Jack on this one that I don't know if it will. When we get to the end of the set and we kind of have the best list of Cat 8, I don't know if this will be there. But I could be wrong. But yeah. Or if it's there, it's maybe a 1 or 2 of.
Yeah, sure. We have Citra as the Light Legend. Really interesting card, this one. 3 CP 7k, and when you cast a summon, choose one forward your opponent controls, it loses 2,000 power until the end of the turn. Which is not bad when you want to do like combat tricky things or something like that, but when she enters the field, you choose 5 cards in your break zone and remove them from the game. If they're all cards removed by this effect are the same element, search for one summon that costs 3 or less and remove it from the game, then cast it without paying the cost.
So I think this card is great. Also, the ability is quite good. But yeah, I think the card's super playable.
And am I right in thinking that when you cast the summon, eventually it just goes back to your break zone?
It should do, yeah.
Yeah, because it's removed and you play it when it resolves at his break zone. So
yeah, it'd be a bit like Man in Black. It would go back to break zone.
Yeah, super good. Having a free Ixion or something like that is pretty good, or anything that you need from the deck at that time. A Maydeen might be a good hit.
Yeah, that's actually a cool idea.
Because obviously, like, I would play this in Earth Water, and does this take the slot of, like, say, a Cymru, or would this take the slot of Chaos Arc?
Very different decks, I think.
Exactly. I think for my kind of speed and tempo, I think this card is better. But it's definitely one that I'm going to be experimenting with.
It reminds me more of like Folker and Mashery sort of stuff. So I think you're going to be like a lot of summons and everything.
Yeah, I think it's a modern day. I'd probably say it's a more fair version of those cards. But yeah.
Really interested to give it a go and see what it's all about, though. I think the 2,000 power on the cast is going to sound like, oh, that's not great, and it's not going to kill anything, but it means that your opponent's just doesn't have the correct blocker or anything.
Doesn't need to kill anything; just needs to threaten.
Yeah, definitely. And for the Dark Legend, we have Reagan, who 6 CP 9k, and he says, when a forward of them Reagan enters your field, choose one forward your opponent controls, dull it. When Reagan enters the field, choose 4 cards in your break zone, remove them from the game, and if there are 4 or more different elements among the cards removed by this effect, search for one forward of cost 4 or less other than multi-element and play it onto the field.
What's he doing? What's this all about?
Is he supposed to play like Zeegheart or something? Or I don't know what if you can't get Warrior of Light, what are you doing?
Also, like, well, what's the point in having that? Oh, when a forward enters, dull something, because he doesn't have haste.
Also, why doesn't he dull something?
Do you
It's
use this to get the squall?
I think the issue is as well. You can't play that Z card thing because he costs 6. That's gonna.
No, he doesn't. Oh no, he does. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, yeah, it's the backups that cost 4.
It's what's going in a multi-element deck.
It costs 3.
It's got at least 4 colours. That's
No.
playing.
It costs 3.
No. Sorry, no. I mean, the cost for everything. So that legend is costing you 6. You're gonna bin your hand to get that to play a 6 from your break.
Which is why it can't really be Squall either, right? Because there'd be no card in your hand to play in the attack phase.
Yeah.
Would you have enough elements anyway?
Another good point. Yeah. So, like, can you play this in Warrior of Light lists? Probably not.
But what's the target? Even if you do.
Yeah.
Is it
Warrior of Light? It can't be.
Is it just a soiree card?
Yeah.
Possibly, but
I feel like this card. I feel like Kageyama had an idea for this card, and I almost feel like the idea he had for this card got lost in translation because there's something about it that just feels a bit odd and just a bit. The wording just sounds a bit strange. He sounds like he should be an aggro card because you're playing him, or you want to cheat, and other forwards are going to dull things. You're going to be swinging in, but then nothing really has haste, and it sounds a bit clunky how to get forwards out. And yeah, I don't know.
I will say that in this set, this is the Dark Legend, and last set, Rugged Gene was the Light Hero.
Yeah.
There's not really a reason for this not to have a keyword, I don't think.
Yeah, I think this should have haste, right?
Yeah. Do you play it with Anniversary Zack, which dulls 2 things to kill a tank? I don't know. This will have to be in the deck.
Why doesn't it just play anything that's 4 or less? I don't get the not multi-element restriction.
Yeah.
Hey, look, at least this card does something, unlike Jack Garland. So at least that's something it's got going for it.
There's a million things that cheat out Warrior of Light at this point. I don't think adding this one to that list would have been a problem.
Yeah. Or Zidane, for that matter, as well. Like,
Just he wants you to be playing multi-elements to get the effect, yet he then can't let you play a multi-element.
yeah.
It's so strange.
Something about the whole card just doesn't feel right. Like I feel like it was mistranslated. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I just don't get it.
It feels like it should say can only play a multi-element. Like that's what it feels like it should be able to do.
Yeah, or play an element that was the same as one of the cards you removed.
Yeah. I think maybe we have to wait and see. Maybe the next set's got the other piece of this or something. I don't know.
Right now, I just do not see it. Like, at all.
But that's it for Light and Dark for now.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
Now we're on to Limit Break, and we've sort of held off on talking about Limit Break. Everybody else has talked about Limit Break, and we haven't really. We've in our private chats had a lot to talk about when it comes to Limit Break.
We've been festering.
We have gone down on it, up on it, back down on it, up on it. So none of us are really sure how to feel on it. But
roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that me and Jacob have definitely settled on is that Limit Break 1 as a cost is incredibly dangerous. And
with Limit Break 1, it quite literally doubles the amount of cards you can play from your Limit Break zone compared to like Limit Break 2 or 3, because obviously you played 1 card and then Limit Break 1. That allows you to play 4 cards out of your... all 8 cards, basically.
Yeah.
But as soon as that goes up to Limit Break 2, then you can play 2 Limit Break 2 cards, and then you're left with 2 cards left in your deck. So literally doubles the amount of Limit Break cards you can play by having Limit Break 1 over Limit Break 2. Which is huge.
And we initially looked at this one with Spoiled, and we went, it's a 3CP 7k that only deals 3k. That's rubbish. And then we thought about it. And then we kept thinking about it. And I now think that Zach, of all of these, is one of the most broken of all of them. And it's like it says it deal 3,000 damage because it cannot say any more than that. But so everybody watching this more likely than not knows how limit breaks work, which is there's a deck of 8 extra cards that you have now that have to be in different sleeves, and the limit break cost is paid by removing basically one of those from the game, which is you turn it face up. So it's not removed from the game, but you turn it face up. But if it's face up, you can't use it. So already you have access to these at any time you want. So Zach is always going to be available to you. So for 3CP and not playing a card in your hand, you get to deal something 3k, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you have a Brynhilde in your hand and you need it to deal 8, or you want your Warrior of Light to ping for 8k, you can always make sure that happens. And a combo which has been really, really popular throughout this Opus 21 format is Tyvus and Ward. So you search for, you've got 3 backups, you play your Tyvus, and you can free play your Ward. Ward can only be paid by Fire CP to actually cast him, but for the cost it is to actually play Ward to the board, normally, you can free play that off of Tyvus and then cast Zach for the same cost and deal 10k and have 2 bodies. Zach is obscene.
Even outside of like, and I think before I talk about Zach in particular, I think my feelings about the limit break in general is that regardless of whether you're pro or against, or you like the idea or you don't like the idea, the thing for me is that regardless of what you think, as a mechanic, it will change the complexion of Final Fantasy TCG going forward. Previously, you didn't necessarily have to be playing crystal cards or have to be playing warp cards or any of these things. There were decks that had those things, but also decks didn't have those things in the format. Whereas if you are not playing a limit break deck, you are at a disadvantage. Just flat out, you're at a disadvantage. So if it means the complexion of the game is going to be changing, now whether that's for the better or the worse, time will tell. With regards to Zach, obviously he's got so many great combo pieces that you've already mentioned there. But again, even in things like Cloud Pod, we've already had the Angeal. You can turn 1, pay Angeal that will play the Cloud from deck, and then turn 2, you have then got the Fire CP on the Angeal to access to then play the Zach from your limit break deck, and then straight away Cloud Pod it into an Aerith and get things back, and it's just
or Warrior of Light.
Yeah, exactly. You can get that online so much easier as an enabler as well because of that as well.
I think one thing to say, I'll be quick. Sorry, Fish.
One thing
to say about limit break, and I know there's probably going to be quite a lot of people, because we've had quite a lot of people in our communities, with limit break cards say like, oh, but why would I ever want to do this? Why? Like, I'm never gonna care about the extra 3k damage Zach does. There's so many better things I could probably be doing during my turn. And the thing with limit break cards is you can absolutely just completely ignore them. If there's a better play in your hand, you can do it, and like never end up playing a limit break card in a game potentially. But they're always available. They're always an extra 8 cards available that you can play at any point for the one moment that you need it. Like, say there maybe isn't a forward that you need to deal 3k damage to. Fine, you can just build up your board and play the Fire Legend that we'll see in a bit. Or maybe you can, if 3k damage isn't quite enough, you can then play the Cloud, which you'll also see in a bit, to just break something straight up. Like, it's just complete and utter flexibility in how you can play these cards, and it's just going to be a completely different way of having to think about this game, in knowing when to use these cards. Also, but it's just the fact that they're always available. Just completely warps how both players will have to consider their options.
And the way we've been putting it as well is a lot of our community have been saying like, well, why would I play this? And the answer is, well, why wouldn't you?
Mm. And I think it's also a case of like the rich get richer in that it feels like multi-element decks are really strong right now, and they get more access to that. So as Jacob's quite eloquently put, you have way more flexibility. Yes, it's like, why would I play this when I can play this instead? Yes, you're right. But how many times have you dead drawn on your hand and been like, oh, I've drawn double backup, like, ugh.
Yeah.
But, like, this completely undoes that, and the multi-element, unfortunately, get to pick and choose the best of the lot. Whereas, if you're mono element at the moment, you've only really, your limit break deck is decided for you because there's only really 3 cards you can play, 2 of the one in your element and the dark one, and then that's your limit break deck decided already.
So we'll get to this in some of the later cards, but yeah. So Tyro in particular, with like how like multi-element decks and 4-color Warrior of Light decks have been going over the last format. I think Tyro is top of my list for ban. Like, it is insane the amount of things that it can play any single limit break card now in your deck. So if you have any need for it, then you can do that, whatever the thing arises with. So what I'll say first is actually, to kind of get through to that point, rather than go to the Fire Legend, which we'll get back to, I'm going to look at Victoria. So again, 40p, 7k, Dragoon, completely, the job doesn't matter, but a limit break 2. If your opponent has no cards in their hand, Victoria gains 3,000 power. When Victoria enters the field, choose 1 forward. If your opponent has 2 or less cards in their hand, deal it 7,000 damage. Now, if you are playing a multi-element Warrior of Light deck, there is no reason not to include this in your LB deck, because if you've got Tyro down, and your opponent just has 2 or less cards in their hand, and they've got a forward that you need to get rid of, this is just going to do that. And you don't have to search it out, you don't have to look for anything, you can just do that. And I think that's pretty dangerous for the game, really.
I would love them to have included, and maybe they will later down the line, a line that is, you can only include cards in a limit break deck that share an element with a card in your main deck.
That's still pretty bad, though.
Yeah, which I agree is still bad, but it gives some sort of mediation to that.
Yeah.
This is why I'm shocked that they went with this route with Limit Break. Like, Limit Break to me is basically an evolution of the character, so there should have been an evolution effect, almost like an S effect for a card in your deck named the same anyway.
Instead, it's you, the player, who's having the Limit Break and not the character. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've said it before. You probably mentioned it on the stream and stuff too. Is like that. It seems like a mistake, and that's why everyone is kind of being a bit like, oh, this is bad because these are really powerful, and God knows what they're going to do in the next sets with them as well if we got these ones. Like,
I thought there was going to be a downside to using them, like you take a point of damage to do an effect or something like that.
Or limit break. The limit break cost is paid by having that much, by like flipping a damage card face down was a good thing I saw. I really like that idea. But no, getting back on track though.
Yeah, back on track. I think this Victoria card I actually do really like though, and that I actually think it's come at a really nice time. In that Rug Rufus was quite prevalent last set, not the funnest thing to play against, and this gives a really nice, neat answer to that. And if someone makes goes Rug Rufus, you can then on your next turn be able to play this Victoria and probably snipe their Rufus. And just gets you a foothold back into that game. So I definitely think I like the inclusion of cards like this. I think the Victoria is one of the better limit break cards that we've got.
I think people are really underrating this card.
Yeah, I think the no cards in hand plus 3k is pretty irrelevant. It's the 7k, and it's the on demand, doesn't have to be dull, deal something 7k is something I think Ice really, really appreciates.
Yeah.
I still think that limitation of, because at least if you're playing something that's not bespoke Ice, making your opponent discard, that whole having to wait for your opponent to have 2 cards or less in hand is going to be its biggest downside for this, but I think that's perfectly fine. Yeah,
but then it's a balance, right? Like I think, which is why I have strong feelings about the Cloud, which I think is probably the best of the lot, because it doesn't really feel like it has too much limitation. Whereas this, it feels like you have to work for it, but it's worth it if you can, and it gets you out of certain sticky situations.
We'll go back to the Fire Legend, which is Montleonis. And 8CP might seem like a lot, and the text is basically the same as the Opus 10 Legend Zande. But you always have to bear in mind with these things that every limit break card costs 2 CP less than a card in your hand because it is not in your hand. So you can always do this. And limit break 3 means that you can do this twice. So
But also, as well, is the extra thing is that yes, there's something as Zande, but if you draw Zande turn 1, it's a bit of a dead card.
Oh, completely, yeah.
It's turn 1 because you're never going to draw this.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So, like we say, like when Montleonis enters the field, choose one forward, 5 forward of cost 3 or less in your break zone, and 1 5 forward of cost 5 or less in your break zone. And if you control 5 or more fire backups, play them onto the field. They gain haste until the end of them. Then put 1 backup you control into the break zone. Yeah, crazy, really good. Super susceptible to Mist Dragon, but you know, if Mist Dragon's really bad against the FF8 stuff, at least it's really good against the fire stuff. So it probably means that there is enough reason to play it.
So
Yeah,
I
and-
like that the cost is after the effect.
Yes.
So if you choose and then someone hackers or breaks one of your backups, you then don't have 5 more fire backups. You then don't get to play them onto the field.
Yes.
See, that was what kind of weirded me out with this was the errata they put out for this guy. It was like, oh, if there's no forwards, the effect doesn't go on the stack. Well, if there's no forwards, why the hell are you paying 8 CP for it?
Yeah.
Need last minute blocking.
Maybe it's your only. Well, yeah, maybe you haven't pulled Zax and you've pulled 3 Montleonis, and that's the only thing in your limit break deck. I don't know.
Yeah, so a pretty crazy
Okay,
effect. And like you say, the
fire.
fact that you can do it whenever you want, that's the main thing, I think. So
Yeah, and giving haste as well, which is great. Like being able to play like an ace onto the field that gives it haste and then can attack and hit something for 10k. Yeah, I think there's lots of like strong application. This is like your this is my limit break to win the game type thing.
yeah, definitely.
Not for that. I think I even play this in monks. Because
It's fire forwards.
Yeah, 5 backup.
oh yeah, sorry, yeah, ignore me.
This has got monks on the brain. We got a monk card
Of
for
course
you.
I have. I mentioned a noun, a verb, and monks. Of course I have.
To be fair, this does read like an Earth card.
So we've got Sergi's, which Limit Break 1. This is probably one of the worst of them. But again, you probably wouldn't have a card like this in your main deck at all.
Never.
You just wouldn't, because it reads like a rare. But you can play this in your Limit Break deck if you need it, and there would be no reason not to.
And it's like nice thing that if they've got a troublesome forward that you're really struggling to keep down, it's like you know, you've got an Une, you really don't want them to reactivate next turn, or a Griever or whatever. Or even if it's just been like, this could be the last thing you need to swing the game, like they've got one forward in front of you,
Yeah.
and you know this to dull it and get out of the way.
That's gonna
It
feel.
doesn't matter that you play a really, really crap card, because if you play a crap card and you've won the game, then you know.
It's
Yeah.
gonna feel awful when that happens.
Yeah, or even like, you know, top deck war where you both roll limit break cards and they've got one forward, and it's like who can get over the edge, and you play him to freeze their one forward if they've got it dull, and then on your turn you then got him as a body, and then whatever else you may draw. Like,
But
yeah,
like we were saying though, it doesn't matter sort of like how dull the effects are if it's Zach dealing 3k or this saying dull it or freeze it. Like the fact that you wouldn't play this in constructed standard, but in your limit break it's like, well, why not? I might need that to end out the game. It's just that's the whole thinking behind this that makes things so different. Like there's no reason for any ice deck not to include both of these ice cards.
Yeah, as you said earlier, if you dead draw 2 backups, what's the downside?
Yeah.
exactly.
Next we have the Legend Ace, which I think unanimously everyone says is enough reason to finally ban Luso.
Yes. Although that should have been banned anyway.
And it's never going to be.
Limit Break 3, 8 CP. When Ace enters the field, deal 1000 damage for each wind character you control to all the forwards your opponent controls. And when he attacks, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a wind card, add it to your hand. So that's the thing about the Legends, is that they are element locked, which is good, I think. But Mono Wind did not need this card.
I don't think it adds anything new to Mono Wind, really.
No,
But it just
they always have access to it.
Yeah, it's what it adds is a different way of doing it, and like if it actually saves. I actually quite like this card because actually the amount of times I've been sat there opposite a Wind player watching them do a million things to get to 7 casts, and we kind of both know eventually they're going to get to 7 casts, whereas I've got to sit there and sit through them playing all these things, and it's boring as hell. And then, like, I had a game the other week when we went down, and the game was supposed to be half an hour long, but I was probably playing 5 minutes. My opponent was playing 25 minutes, and it's just like, at least this way they can just slap it down. It all happens in one go.
Yeah, but they won't mill out.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least it's got 8k, so it's easy to AMI. That's a really good thing about it. So, yeah, it's tough.
It's also this is only coming in twice.
But that's true.
Normally enough. A bit like the Monleonis, you're probably playing this to win the game.
Yeah. But you're not playing to win the game is Yuri, who is slightly overcosted at 5 CP and only has 4k. And no, Kato Bashtar can't get him because he'll never be in the break zone. Limit Break 2, which isn't great, and if you control 5 or more backups, he gains 4,000 power. Doesn't say win backups, though. It's interesting. When Yuri enters the field, you may search for one card named Chelinka forward of cost 2 or less and play it onto the field. And so you either get the one from this set or the one that breaks a monster. Yeah, this might be the worst limit break card, and that's fine for Win to have that.
Yeah. I was so scared about what they may have got as their limit break card. I was actually like,
same.
And then when I saw this, I was like, "Oh, thank God!"
I've only just seen his stats. He only gets to 8. That's he's expensive.
Yeah, but he has haste off of the Chelinka.
Yeah, but
Well, theoretically 3 CP 8k that gets a 2 cost out. Like the stats aren't.
It's not a 3
bad as
CP.
it
It's
could
always
be.
a 5 CP. You always have to pay 5.
I mean theoretically because you're not playing him from hand.
Yes,
like,
but that would mean that it would be 7 down to 5, not 5 down to 3. You always have to pay 5, no matter what.
Yeah, but if it was in your hand,
Then it would be
regardless.
5 and a card.
Yeah.
So it's always going to be 5. It's not 5 down to 3. It's 7 down to 5.
But you're getting a 2 or less, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Isn't like you're getting a 2 or less onto the field as well, which is like where that extra value comes in. But we're talking too much about
If
card.
you could play a backup, it wouldn't be so bad. But yeah, no.
If it was the final gambit of like maybe this is the last thing we needed to get that last point of damage because it has haste, but then you got to have the Chelinka in your deck for the off late game. So yeah, I don't think this sees play.
And it only gains haste if you've got 3
You have 3 or
FFTC
more.
characters.
so you need one more.
Yeah.
It's no Stalin, right?
Yeah.
He's always
in
there.
like fine. I think.
Next up, we have the really interesting Shantoto, who's got a limit break of 7. So 4 CP, 9k. And when it enters, you must pay 5 Earth. And when you do so, remove all forged monsters other than Shantoto from the game.
Very split opinion on this one. So
Very
far.
split opinion.
I think you're not giving it enough credit.
I think that removing your entire limit break to pay 9 on a forward that means that you don't play the backup is bad.
Again, this is something that I sort of touched on when back in the Earth set review. I think Earth is trying to go back to that whole let's play fight effect spells again. So you could play this to curb out aggro or curb out monsters, and then completely go ham with it. Just start killing anything with your fight spells or blocking with impunity, and then you don't have to worry about if you've played the Chantato previously because you've the backup one, because you've got so many cards that are like enter, put card backup into the break zone, break something like Ignis, or the you've got Neo X Death does the same thing. So
I actually am a bit with Fish, but on like a different wavelength. I think this card is really good. And I appreciate what you're saying. I think it's expensive to lose your whole limit break, and it costs a lot. However, it's not necessarily the card coming into play, it's the threat of the card coming into play, which is why this card is so good. Like, it's basically a nuclear deterrent, right? Like, how many nuclear bombs get fired these days? Barely any. But the threat of them stop them getting shit. No, but it's a fair point.
I completely agree with you.
Federal players really can't go wide when they're playing against Earth, because it's not even like, haven't they got Shantoto in the hand? Or it's not even like, I'm going to play this again and snipe the Shantoto. They will have access to this early.
I will
On
say,
the back of this,
well, I'll say in on the complete other side though, like Earth is a massively color fixie element where you've got loads of things that can do that, and by playing this means you can't do any other limit break card, and you can't have until this point, so you can't have it late game because you can't have played anything. And if you decided that you needed to play another limit break card, you can't play this one.
But it's not a game board wipe.
Yeah, and plus now that, like, look at Morgan already has literally seen this and gone, well, I guess I'm not playing monsters. But again, like, this is better to play than Neo X Death, even if you do bin your entire limit break hand, because you're not then losing backups.
But I can't play other limit break cards.
I have quite a lot to say about this, so I'm going to get it all out here. So, for a start, no matter what, if you're playing enough Earth that you can pay 5 in one go, there is exactly 0 reasons not to put this in your limit break card. Because if there's ever a point you do need it,
I agree.
Then sure, you play it. Yeah, crack on. But I don't think. But obviously, you're never going to play more than 2 of these in your limit break card. So I think as much as I think that this card isn't that good for a plethora of different reasons, there's exactly 0 reasons not to play one of these in your limit break deck, because you're always going to have it. And you know what, Jacko made an excellent point. The fact that this is always available, your opponent has always got to play around it, so that threat is always there. And you know, if it is a case of, you're going to lose if you don't play this, then you play it, because then you're still, in the game, even if you're not able to, because then I suppose if you don't play the backup one and you've lost all your limit break zone anyway, who cares about color fixing, right? But I think it's entirely matchup dependent. It's entirely due to the flexibility of the limit break deck. If you're playing against a deck where you need to play this card, you can play it, fine. But if you're playing against a deck where you don't need to play it, I think you try not to play it as much as possible, because then, you will have the rest of your limit break deck available. And then also at the same time, again, with the mind games, at the exact moment you play any limit break card in your deck, your opponent then knows that you're not able to play this card, and they can go wide again and try and threaten the board state. So I think this card actually has a lot of thought process that actually has to go into whether or not you do play this card. But again, so the big point is the name Shantoto, obviously, because the backup is never been more important in terms of color fixing for your limit break deck, being able to play every single limit break card you want, and have that complete flexibility over the game and over what reactions you can do depending on your opponent's turns. And then obviously, but then at the same time, if you want to play this card, realistically, you want to be playing it off of as many backups as possible, because it is so expensive. So by that time, are you already going to have played a Shantoto backup, in which case this card's dead, but then just play your other limit break cards. So I think as much as I don't think this card is that good, in terms of, say the long game, where you want to be playing as many different limit break cards as possible to kind of be flexible with the game state. If there's any point where you need to play this to stay in the game, you can do it.
I agree that you absolutely should include it if you're playing Earth cards. I just think that the cost is too high.
Sure, I don't disagree. But again, if it means you don't lose the game next turn, then you can play it.
Sure, I just think that the flexibility to play more than one limit break card is probably going to won you the game earlier. But like I said, you're entirely right with all of that.
I think it fully depends on the matchup, because granted, if you're against kind of a standard sort of deck, maybe even some aggro decks, you can just play some of the other stuff that deals damage, breaks something. Yeah. That's perfectly fine. But the moment you see something like Wind Ice or Windstorm or just anything with monsters, this immediately becomes the thing you play. because it just sets your opponent back so much
the
further.
thing to bear in mind as well is that this is only playable in Mono Earth.
Yeah.
Where it's like the backup
More
is a
than
lot more
likely, yeah.
flexible with that as well. So
But again, though, you could still do both.
This sits in limit break deck until you've basically got the backup, and then and you can almost bait someone out, because whenever you cast a limit break card that isn't Shantoto, this is of course the first thing you flip face up because it's dead. You can't use it once a different one's been used. So of course it's the first thing that gets flipped face up, but then you can wait till you've got the backup in your hand before you even do that anyway. So I agree that, yes, I think it's a heavy price to pay to lose your whole limit break deck. However, it's a heavy price to pay if it means you don't lose the game. Like, that's the heaviest price you can pay. So, like, yeah.
And you got to think how many games happens when literally all you're doing is like begging that you top deck a Shantoto and it's like the bottom 5 cards of your deck.
no,
whatever.
absolutely, yeah. I think we'll just have to really see how this one goes more than anything.
How many games would you have cast this against Cat 13 Fish?
Every single one, if I could. Every bloody one.
Next up, we have Mart, which is one that I think is, again, Limit Break 1, incredibly dangerous, and I think this card is pretty insane for its flexibility. In Warrior of Lights, that means that you just cast it and suddenly your Refia has Brave, which means that she can attack as well as bottom deck something. Mental. Even making sure that your Faris has Brave is absolutely crazy. Even in Monks, the idea is that if you've got the other Mart on the field, well, Ursula can eat that, and then you can play this one, or you can play this one, and you can eat it, and then play another one, and eat it, and play another one, you can eat it, and just have your guys so big that you just swing out the game.
The one thing that I will say, like, I know we've talked about this card before, and I'm not entirely convinced on it, but again, I am just purely seeing it from a Monk perspective. There is one thing that does make me kind of come around on it, and it's the fact that it has Brave on its own.
Well, it wouldn't matter anyway, because it gives everything Brave.
No, yeah, but that's only for a turn. With Ash as an inclusion, this is now an 11k guy that no one's going to get past, sort of thing. So.
Yeah, definitely. Incredibly flexible. It's not really too much to say about it, because it does exactly what it says, but like, it's these Limit Break ones that you really can't underestimate. Like, this card is really good, and you can do this, and then you can block, and then you can do this. Like, you can...
Yeah, Limit Break 1s will always exist at least as, like, one copy in your deck, because it means if you ever play 2 Limit Break 2 deck cards, then for that last 2 floating cards, you have a card that you can play. Or in some way, shape, or form, a Limit Break 1 card will always feature in your Limit Break deck from here on out.
Yeah.
Well, either way, it says Monk on it, so I'll need foils, thanks.
I'll need full art foils of the Cloud, thank you. Limit Break 2, 4 CP, 8k job Rider for some reason.
Because it couldn't have bloody soldier.
When
If it
Cloud
was any other job, it'd be busted.
When Cloud enters the field, choose one forward of cost 3 or less, break it. Crazy. Anytime you just come against twins and just like, nah, I want to get rid of that, cool, done. You know, especially with Lightning, it's just been like, oh, cool, any problem card is usually like something like 3 CP or less. It's just crazy how easy it is to do that. The interesting thing is in its Limit Break, which is S and 4 and Dull to break an opponent's forward and deal your opponent a point of damage. The problem is that means that you have to play copies of Cloud in your main deck, and I don't think you can or should do that.
Yeah, I think it's a trap thinking to try and play that S ability, but the Cloud itself, it annoys me that I feel like just choose one forward across 3 less isn't enough of a restriction to do high break. You know, going back to the Victoria, it says they have to have 2 less cards in hand to do the 7k. I feel like this had to say like active forward or something like that. I feel like it's too strong. With it being able to just break anything across 3 or less on a 4 CP 8k body that you always have access to, it's just too strong for me. I think it had to say active.
And especially if Tyro can play it in Warrior of Light or something like that. It's crazy.
I'm a big fan of the fact that this kills Fang and Lightning in 13.
Yes.
So, which means obviously that deck is very much, if your opponent doesn't have the answers, they will lose like 95% of the time, you know. But
on 4 CP, it means that you don't need backups as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it gives you a body to block the next thing that they would want to be playing anyway.
In a lightning specialized deck, in the absence of playing light or dark cards, even if you're empty-handed, you'll always have access to this because you just draw 2 and then you discard the 2 cards you drew to play it.
Yeah. So Cloud is very good. Really looking excited to try that one out. And we have Lightning, which looks on the surface like nothing special at all. 4 CP, 5k, limit break 2, that says that when she enters, choose one lightning summon in your break zone, add it to your hand, which is pretty good, to be honest. That I've seen a lot of people talking about the free cost Rama, that if you play a forward that turn, then it becomes free, which is really good to get a kill out of it as well, which wouldn't actually cost you anything. And again, remember that this is not in your hand, so it's always costing just the 4 CP, and you're going to get summon back, which means it comes down to 2. So it's pretty mental in how flexible this can be as well. But it has to be a lightning summon, but again, that means if you're going to get back your Ixion, this costs him 4, which means it's not going to die.
Glad this was like 2 like Cloud and not limit break 1.
What's that, sorry?
I'm just so glad that this was limit break. Because the other ones, it was like there were different costs.
Yeah.
As if it had been limit break 1, that would have been like disgusting. So yeah.
I'm surprised it rare lightning that doesn't have haste.
I was going to say, I think this. I'm surprised it doesn't have haste, but also quite happy.
Does not need it.
Right, yeah, artwork to use for her as well.
Next up, we have the Legend Tidus, 5 CP, 9k, limit break 3. It says when Tidus enters the field, if you control 8 or more forwards and or backups, you may pay 3, bringing it up to 8 cost. When you do so, select up to 3 of the 3 following actions, which is choose one forward, put it at the bottom of its owner's deck, choose one backup, put it on the top of its owner's deck, and draw 2 cards. So, this is going to be a game winner more than anything. It has to be played late because you need 5 backups and 3 forwards.
This reads... Is it just me, or does it read kind of weird? Like, it feels like it should be... If you don't have 5, you get at least 1 effect. But...
Was the Una cost reduction too?
Yes. So, that's quite relevant as well.
Yeah.
And also counts towards its character costs, so...
As well, being it only the fact that it's only 3 water as an additional cost, this is definitely potentially playable in like water something else, like earth water or something, because say you like 2 water backups and a water card in hand, means you can get this effect off as well, because the forwards and backups don't have to be water either.
No, well, that's the crazy stuff about it all. And like, if you played this off of the Una, you're going to get a summon back as well, so that like paying the cost is that much cheaper again. It's just
you get a free cast Leviathan back, and then you deal with 3 forwards, 1 to bottom, 1 to top, 1 to hand.
That or the additional water CP as well.
It's a really fair point that this one's a bit easier to pull off outside of mono. Like, I definitely think this goes in, Water, Earth, Chaos, Arc. There'll definitely be scenarios where you can pull this off in that deck.
No, definitely. It's it's pretty crazy. Mono Water has consistently been a good deck for the last 2 years at least, and this I wouldn't say that it needed a card like this, but it's got a card like this now. So from the highs to the lows, we go from Tidus to Leo. Look,
He's very chuffed with himself.
He shouldn't be with those big balloon shorts.
Yeah, he's not really just a king, is he? What is that outfit? What's it of?
It's the look in the eyes that's getting me. It's like, I'm gonna eat your soul.
You're full on twink mode, I think.
Yeah. But you have to bear in mind, look, he might not be doing much like attack damage or anything like that, but he doesn't cost a card in your hand. It's only 3, and you may need to just draw a card 1 turn. Again, for limit break 1, there's no reason not to include it.
Even just to buy you a turn to like put him down as a blocker, draw a card, hope you can survive a turn by having him block.
Completely, yeah. So like, again, even though like everything about it looks pretty, undervalue, like it's not, because you wouldn't play this. You wouldn't build your deck around and have this in your deck. but there is no reason not to include it if you don't have to put it in your deck. Yeah, it's pretty mental, but nothing much to say. That we've got the last card now. We finally made it to the last card, which is Little Leela, which is a Dark Limit Break 1 at 5 CP 8k. Doesn't do anything on entry, but when she attacks, you can choose one forward, and it loses 7,000 power until the end of the turn. That's pretty crazy when you can realize it can go in any deck.
It feels like it should have haste, though, right?
It definitely should have haste.
I think it'd be busted if it did.
Yeah.
But for
Okay,
that,
we've got Rug.
It should have haste and brave and first
can't-
round. Yeah, got Rug.
yeah.
We've got Rug. Why not? Why can't this have all the effects?
I feel like this one's been designed a lot fairer than the others, and it's definitely. I think maybe there was a lot of design aspects overlooked with Zach. But like, if this attacks, then you're probably in a really good state for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Is this standard playable? I have no idea, to be honest with you. I
You
cannot
use
say
it to not chuck one in your deck. Like.
exactly.
I feel like you basically get to the point where I think if you're playing ice and if you're playing lightning especially, you probably cast 2 Victoria and 2 Cloud per game, leaving you with 2 limit break cards left in your deck, and you basically have, like, for if you're ice, you basically have the Surgis and this left as your 2 limit break cards, and you basically get to pick which of the 2 you then choose, depending on which scenario at the end is more applicable.
Yeah. I think actually building the limit break deck itself is going to be the hardest thing. 'Cause you've got the choice of what to turn up, haven't you?
Yeah.
I'd be surprised to see this one that often.
Yeah, but again, like we say, it's limit break 1. There's no reason not to include it.
Yeah. No, it'd be included. I just don't expect to see it played against me or just see it.
Right, that's it. I'll do
To
it.
be honest with you, all of the others, as far as I can remember, like every other card requires some form of setup or like reaction, like to kill something that someone's already played. This is the only one that is like technically proactive, because you can just play this and you don't care about it killing something, you don't care about it getting advantage for your board, you can just play this down and have it be a threat.
Yeah.
Also,
I'm very glad it costs 5.
Yeah, in that late game scenario as well, where you and your opponent are like in top deck mode, you top deck this. Well, you don't need to top deck this. Sorry, you just play this, and if they dead draw as well, they can't even play a Victoria or a Cloud to get rid of it, and then you can then reduce their thing on the attack when you attack with it next turn. So yeah, I think it will definitely come up a few times on that scenario.
Was it discussed with regards to the rules for a limit break? Because they said it's like a sideboard deck. Is that changeable between like rounds of an organized play or anything?
No, it's still constructed.
Sure, okay. Just checking.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to leave it there because it's getting quite late, and we've talked for several hours about these cards. But yeah, interesting set. I have literally no idea how a lot of this is going to feel, but I think it's worth giving a good go to. Interesting to see how we'll feel about limit break in 3 months' time. Whether we think, oh no, it's not that bad at all, or let's pack our things up and go home. But
in the meantime, though, I think it's just to help with Jack's wallet. If you could give us a like, share, and subscribe, we would really appreciate it.
yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
Am I getting all the money from those
No,
subscriptions?
just
No,
just
absolutely
sympathy
not.
likes.
No, you're getting the moral support from the likes.
Your wallet needs a safe space, mate. That's all we're saying.
Don't forget as well, if you are looking at buying any product, we do have a link down below which you can use for the Firestone website.
Yeah, and everything that you'll need for our socials and everything like that will be on cymrucactuars.com. And thanks for joining us for the journey, and see you in the next one. Goodbye. Bye, everybody.
Bye everyone.
Bye.